Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Is the mic working? Nope. Now it's good. Can you guys hear me? Up. Perfect. Thank you. Wow. First day of 2025. Apologies for the snow last week, but I think it was in everybody's interest that we be safe rather than sorry. So thank you for your flexibility on that front. And as we start off the new year, we're starting a little bit earlier than normal just because we have so much to cover. We have to have happy dollars because there's quite a few happy things out there. And given everything that's going on with California, et cetera, I thought making sure we shared some of those happy news would be great. So if everybody could stand, let's kick off from MLK Day and the new year. We want to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now if we could just have a brief moment in respect for all of our friends, family, loved ones out in California, just a moment of silence. All right. And then for our thought for the day, this is a long one, but there have been a lot of people asking, given a lot of the conversations that have happened in the media, I'll say. Polio is a daily discussion. I'm not going to get political. What I will say is that this is an opportunity for us and people from all backgrounds to come together and unite. We all have a common goal in making sure that polio is eradicated. We need to trust that Rotary International and the Gates Foundation and other great minds will ensure that the right decisions and direction is taken. Don't waste time on negativity or feed into the polarization. Instead, speak factually and non-judgmental to remind the population that in 2024, there were 88 cases, up from 12 the previous year. And right now, we were trending at about 90 cases, okay? It occurred not only in Afghanistan and Pakistan, where it had been isolated, but we also saw a case in Gaza and some in Mozambique. So it's important that people remember, this is not something that just goes away. It's important that we stay diligent and stay on top of it. This is why we contribute to the foundation to drive eradication. While I'm not advocating complacently, I'm advocating that we leverage this as a common ground, which I believe we had an excellent program on, in which we can discuss with people with differing opinions. It's a great program that everybody supports. So don't feed into the negativity. Let's take the high road and make sure that we're educating people on the importance of staying diligent about it. And with that, if I could ask past President Schindel to come up and speak on a reflection. As you all know, our programs for the reflections have been all the past presidents really sharing what they did during their term, what the club did, because we have so many new members, myself included, that don't know the history. So I thank you and I thank all the other past presidents for sharing their information. With that, Dad.
Well, I was club president in 1988 and 89, but I want to report on the years the presidency of Bud Core, which would have been the years of 1987 through 1990. And before I get into specifics, I want to mention that our club sponsored the formation of the Bloomington North Club in 1974. And almost immediately, our club was known as the Old Man's Club. So, I'm very happy to report what the old men did during that term. In 1987, we started our own foundation to better serve and address the needs of our local community. That foundation continues today with over 38 years of service to the community. Also in 1987, Rotary International declared women to be eligible for membership. And of course, you know that the other clubs said, well, the old men will never stand for that. So what the old men did, you would have thought that we were planning a sorority rush or a football type draft. We developed a list of women serving critical leadership roles across Bloomington, and we rushed them. And you'll recognize a lot of the names of our first classes. Vicki Thevenot from county government, Judy Talley from the Bloomington Hospital Foundation, Margaret Joseph from the WTIU, and then joining us over the next 2 years were Kay Leach, Joyce Poling, Judy Schroeder, Virginia Rose, Rebecca Wilson, Charlotte Zitlow, Jane Hitchcock, and Tina Swanson, Viola Talaferro, and Judy Witt. So let me just say that the old men made a statement. And one of our major goals during this period was to expand our club membership to 150. We actually reached that goal in 1990 with an average attendance of 80%. In 1988, the World Health Assembly unanimously launched the global goal to eradicate polio, which was referred to previously. Our club was given a goal to raise $22,000 by Rotary International. We raised $103,000. That was by far the largest amount raised by any club in our district and one of our largest in the state of Indiana. Thus, the comment of our club making an impact locally and worldwide is justified. One closing comment that I had the pleasure of doing was announcing the first Rotarian who was expecting a baby. And no, it wasn't Charlotte. But I thought that, that was kind of fitting considering what had happened. But anyway, it was a great time. There was great growth, great leadership, and great involvement. Thank you.
So this is one of those rare moments that I get to reverse roles and say how proud I am of you. So on that note, Dr. Dakir Abdullah, if you could come up and announce our guests, please. And by the way, it's great to see so many faces out there.
Hope everybody's doing okay today. Of course, I'm up here to announce and welcome the guests. Whenever we call your name, or I call your name rather, please stand up. Both guests today are from Rotaract. First, we have Yaya Cater. Is that how you say your name? And please forgive me if I say your name wrong. Wasif Ali. Thank y'all.
And Joy, do we have any guests online?
Tracy, we do not have guests. We are just Rotarians.
All right. We do not have birthdays this week either, but we do have an anniversary, and that goes to our former district governor, Lance Eberly, for 23 years. And then for announcements, all right, once again, hold on to your seats. We got a few. Andrea Murray and Heidi Schultz of our Family, Friends, and Fun Committee will be collecting gifts for our gift basket to auction off at the district meeting in Indianapolis. So if you could please bring items, whether it be wine, tickets, what have you, we need to get that gift basket together. Second, announcements, a reminder to sign up for our district conference in Indy. It will be at the Keystone at the Crossing, Sheridan. We are also, as a club, going to be sponsoring 5 new members who've been in the club under 2 years to attend, as it's a great learning experience and networking opportunity. So look for the link in the roundabout that will be going out, but please, the more members we can have attend, the better. And this year, it's going to be a much larger representation from the state versus just the few districts as in the past. So I encourage everyone to try to make it. Next, Sarah Cochran sent us a warm thank you note for the Rotary baby blanket we gave her for baby Cochran, which is due any day now. You can find the thank you note up at the desk. You may notice in the middle of your tables, we have the lunch buddy lists. So take a look there. Looking forward to meeting with our lunch buddies. It's a great opportunity to meet somebody new. So don't hesitate to reach out. And then lastly, from announcement standpoint, with a heavy heart that I share with the club that Judy Witt's husband, Lee, passed away last Thursday. Cards and notes may be sent to her at 800 East First Street in Bloomington, 47401, and contributions may be given to Teachers Warehouse. A memorial service will be scheduled for late February, March. More to come on that front. Meanwhile, Judy is actually at home recovering from pneumonia. So your thoughts and prayers are very welcome. And with that, we're going to do happy dollars. And Michael, while you're going up, I'm going to kick it off with a $20 in recognition of our new superintendent of MCCSC, Dr. Winston. Yeah.
Try this again. I am very proud to announce that on Sunday about 8:30, my first great grandchild arrived on January 12th. She is Myra Louise Hickman. She lives in Bloomfield, and I hope to see her a lot. She's 7 pounds, 14 ounces, and 21 inches long.
I am happy to give $3 for 3 cars, but we will only have one and it will be all electric. So if anybody's looking for a really fine late model Volvo or a really average older Honda Accord that is a workhorse, just let me know. We've got great deals because we're going all electric.
What makes me happy is music and specifically singing. And so I'm really happy to invite you all to the next Voces Nove concert in 2.5 weeks on Sunday, February the 2nd. Our storytelling brains. You'll learn about how our brains connect dots and develop stories. And we sing about it. It's really fun.
Go ahead. You'll come back.
Okay, I am happy. I am $20 happy. Some of you may know that the club is sponsoring the Mohammadi family from Afghanistan, refugees. Some of you may also know that my wife Cindy and I have been unofficially sponsoring the daughter's fiance, Jawed, who's been living at our house. And the reason I am so happy that Jawed is living in our house is because he has a strong back and can shovel snow. And so this is the $20 that would have been the down payment I would have had to pay on a much larger amount to shovel all that snow.
$20 in recognition of our district and the state of Indiana, who's going to interview 7 outstanding candidates and select one for a $40,000 scholarship to go study anywhere in the world. Our club has endorsed one of the candidates, Sarah Greenwell, who aspires to go study at the University of Melbourne in Australia. And her heart is with Indigenous people. So she plans to go there to take a look at the health issues and challenges and other challenges of the Aborigines and then bring it back to the United States. So $20 for the All Indiana Global Scholarship.
Here's a few bucks because I'm happy to tell a little story here. Flashback to 1967. I was at the Kappa Sig House studying for finals really hard. And I heard this commotion on campus, and I'm talking, it sounded like a riot. So I go down on campus. I mean, I hated to leave my books. What was happening, it was what's called, I don't think they do it anymore, it's called a panty raid. Anybody ever heard of those? Good old-fashioned panty raid. Now, I thought it was absolutely disgusting. I didn't know much to do with it, but I thought I'd just follow the crowd and see what was going on. So they were at McNutt, complete debauchery. I was, and then the crowd goes over to Briscoe. And Briscoe's pretty high, it's a high rise. So there's this kid, and he starts climbing up the side of Briscoe. I don't know what the heck he was hanging on to. He got the first window, which is, probably 10 feet high, goes to the second story, gets up to the third story. Women are throwing out their undergarments. Oh, that was such debauchery. Anyway, but this guy was up there with.
Keep the mic close to your mouth so we can hear. Sorry.
I don't know what he was hanging on to, but he was hanging on to like Spider-Man. He got the nickname Spider-Man. He's at the third story. Looks like he's starting to head towards the fourth. I think the alcohol was wearing off. He came back down. So anyway, flash forward. Sometime last year, I was talking to one of my dear Rotarian friends, and we were talking about being on campus in 1967. And I mentioned that penny rate, and he was telling me, yeah, I was there, and I climbed up the side of Briscoe. My fellow Rotarians, I'd like to introduce you to Spider-Man, Dr. Spence. Say hello to Spider-Man.
All right. One last one.
I'm guilty.
One last one, Michael, Charlotte, and then we're going to go online. Joy, is there anyone online? Okay, we'll do one online. So let's go with Charlotte first.
I'll try to make it fast. I want $5 for one happiness that I was selected for one of the first rounds in this club, and that made me very happy because I had run for Congress and not been allowed to speak in any male organizations, and it was the Supreme Court at that time that decided that all the men who were members of men's clubs, service club, if they could subtract their dues from their taxes, that women should too. And so I was the benefit of liberal thought, I guess. And I always say I'm a Rotarian partly out of spite.
Well, we're thankful for that. And Joy online?
Yes, Tim, go right ahead.
Hey, I decided to stay home and try this out. I want to give some happy dollars, 10 or 20, to the emergency winter shelter, which right now is housed at the First Christian Church, so that our unhoused population can have a warm place to sleep in these very, very cold temperatures. Other faith groups have contributed, especially the St. Thomas Lutheran Church and the Presbyterian Church and others. Thank to all the people, and happy dollars for those that are keeping our unhoused population warm during these difficult winter days. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right. And with that, we have one of our most special times. I'm going to ask the membership committee, Lori Garrity, our chair, and Jonah to come up, as well as Michael Shermis.
We're very excited to induct a new member today, Jonas Chang, and I'm going to invite Michael to start with the bio.
Alrighty. So Jonas Chang currently serves as the Grant Research and Sourcing Manager for the City of Bloomington. He and his wife, Andrea, moved to Bloomington in 2022 when she began the Master in Fine Arts program at Indiana University. Jonas subsequently enrolled in the Master of Public Affairs program at Indiana University in spring 2024 and is scheduled to complete the program in spring 2025. He received his bachelor's degree in history and sociology and anthropology from Truman State University in 2018. During his life, Jonas has had the opportunity to live and work in cities large and small, including Los Angeles, California, College Station, Texas, Madison, Wisconsin, and of course now Bloomington, Indiana. His work has included copy editing for a mathematics education research office at Texas A&M University, grant writing for local nonprofits, and now grant management for local government. He also serves on the board of directors for CDFI Friendly Bloomington, and when not When not writing grants-related documents, Jonas enjoys creative writing in his spare time, as well as reading and hiking on the great trails available throughout the Indiana Uplands region. He also enjoys gardening, though the local rabbits make his enjoying this activity challenging at times. As a colleague of Jonas's, I will say he's a really nice guy, and you'll enjoy getting to know him.
And now the formal stuff. Jonas Chang, on behalf of the board and membership of the Bloomington Rotary Club, it is a great pleasure to welcome you as the newest member of our club. We look forward to the fellowship that we will share, as well as your participation in the club projects that make our club, community, country, and world a better place. Though Rotary is not a political organization, Rotarians are vitally concerned with good citizenship and the election of effective leaders to public office. While Rotary is not a religious organization, it is built on those highest principles that have served as a moral compass for people throughout the ages. Rotary is an organization of business, professional, and community leaders pledged to uphold the highest ethical and moral standards. Rotarians believe that worldwide fellowship and peace can be achieved when people work together and uphold the Rotary motto of service above self. Rotary activities exemplify the partnership, respect, and generosity that one would expect from people who believe they have a responsibility to help others. Jonas, you have been chosen for membership in the Bloomington Club because your fellow members believe you to be a leader in our community and because you possess the qualities to champion the message and principles of Rotary. You are a representative of your vocation and talent within our club and community. You have now become an ambassador of Bloomington Rotary, carrying the ideals of service to all within your sphere of influence. Our community will know and judge Rotary by your character and service. We will also look to you for inspiration as we strive to become better Rotarians. We will now pin you with a distinguishing badge of a Rotarian, your Rotary pin. We ask that you wear your Rotary pin with pride in your many endeavors and as a symbol of our recognition of your contribution towards a better world through your Rotary membership. Fellow Rotarians, please rise if you are able and welcome our newest Rotarian, Jonas Chang. And now we'll take a couple quick pictures. There you go. Yes.
All right. That's the good stuff. And so now for more good stuff, we'll have Mr. Rotary himself, Jim Bright, up to introduce our program.
Fellow Rotarian Liz Irwin is a woman on the move. She is government and community relations manager for Duke Energy in Monroe and serves 5 other counties as well. Now, on any given day, you might see Liz meeting with local government officials or community leaders, doing interviews with area news media, or presenting Duke Energy Foundation checks to local charitable organizations. Last Tuesday, we even saw Liz accepting an IU basketball in recognition of Duke Energy's support of the Hoosiers. During last week's heavy storm, Liz was on call to represent Duke Energy as a spokesperson in case of any electric power outages in her 6-county area. Now, in her spare time, you're likely to see Liz doing community service with Rotary or serving on the boards of other local organizations. Now, prior to joining Duke Energy, Liz served in key communications positions at Smithville Communications and for the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. A self-described outdoor enthusiast, Liz hikes near Lake Monroe. She camps, she kayaks, she hunts, and she participates in the martial arts. On weekends, she occasionally explores the back roads of Indiana in her 1974 Ford Bronco. Liz graduated from IU with a degree in journalism and political science and she earned the Chamber's Institute for Organization Management. Today's talk is especially timely as Liz will share with us information on Duke Energy's storm preparedness and response operations. Fellow Rotarians, warm welcome for Liz Irwin.
Thank you, Jim. Well, thank you, Jim, for the kind introduction. It's great to be here in front of all of you. You know, it's been wonderful to be a Rotarian since 2013 and, you know, be part of this club. As Jim mentioned, you know, it's been very busy with all the different activities in the many counties, which is why a lot of times I'm just joining online. But I'm pleased to be here in person today and share some information with you about Duke Energy's storm preparedness and our storm response efforts. Does the mic sound okay to you? It seems like it's reverbing a little bit. I'll stand over here. Is that better? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I've been at Duke Energy about 2.5 years now, and it's been quite a learning curve. It was helpful coming from another utility, Smithville, but there's so much to learn about what we do at Duke Energy to keep the power on and keep the lights on every day. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about our general storm response and storm preparedness and readiness. I'll focus in a little bit using the June 2024 storm as an example of some of the things that we do in situations like this. And then I'll spend a little bit of time talking about some of our grid reliability investments that we're making here in Monroe County. So first of all, I just wanted to give a little overview about Duke Energy for those of you that may not be familiar with some of the details of our operations. But we are the largest electric utility in Indiana. We have a 23,000 square mile service area, and we serve in 69 of the 92 counties. We have 890,000 customers here in Indiana with 36,800 miles of transmission and distribution lines. So that's, as you can imagine, that's a lot of lines to maintain. And we do that out of our 32 operation centers, which you can see on the map. And the area in orange is my area. Those are the counties that I cover. And the other colors represent our other government community relations managers that serve in the same role in other parts of the state. There are 9 of us in total. We have approximately 2,500 Duke Energy Indiana employees here in the state, although we have many more because we serve in 7 different states. But today I'm really focusing a lot on Duke Energy Indiana. So I think it's really important to understand that we remain in a constant state of readiness. We are always looking to see when the next event might happen. We in fact have an entire team dedicated to emergency preparedness. And what that means is we're looking on the horizon for any potential storms, any other potential threats to our infrastructure. Some of you may remember in the past hearing about some of the substation attacks that we've experienced down in the Carolinas. If there was, for some reason, a loss of communications or a major media event, those are all the things that that team is looking for, making sure that our whole entire team is prepared. When we know that there is either an imminent threat or something that's already happening in progress, such as a storm, depending on the severity of the incident, we put a whole command structure in place. It's called our incident command structure. And the reason that we do that is we want to make sure that we're ensuring clear leadership and clear communications during any time where things are not operating normally. We want to make sure that that communication goes across our entire organization and that we can continue our critical business operations. Also making sure that we can make the best, fastest, and safest response to any incident that might happen. You may also not know this, but every Duke Energy employee has a storm role. In addition to our normal everyday activities, we have a storm role. So if a storm happens or an event happens, we have to kick into that role. So for me, it's very similar to what I do every day. But in the case of a storm, then I put all other work aside and I am the spokesperson for the company locally when it comes to local government, also with local media. We do have a whole media team that will respond to some larger questions, but I'm really boots on the ground, and I'm here to do whatever our operations team needs in order to keep things going. So this timeline that you'll see kind of talks about some of these things that I've spoken about. Of course, we have different checklists depending on what we see on the horizon. For example, in a hurricane situation, like we see in the Carolinas, we've got a much bigger window in which to work. We've got our meteorologists who are watching those storms. They're helping prepare and determining how we need to be ready to respond. In the Midwest, we have different types of storms. Sometimes we'll have impacts from hurricanes, but mostly it's pretty quick moving things. So we don't have as long of a window to prepare on all of those. And you may remember that in the June storm, we had a lot of folks here from other parts of the country helping. And that's because as an energy provider, we participate in mutual assistance programs so that if we need help, we can call on that help and they will be here to help us. But the same holds true in other situations. Just like with the hurricanes, we sent a lot of our folks down to the Carolinas and Florida to help with hurricane restoration efforts. And in the recent ice storm that we just had south of here in Evansville, they got hit pretty hard, and we had a lot of our teams from Duke Energy down helping those folks. It's also important to understand that different things happen depending on how the incident is ranked. And how we respond in terms of that incident command structure is based on this ranking. So 0 would be considered a normal operation. You know, maybe we have a storm, maybe there's some additional outages, but nothing that's really going to rise to a big event. So we would say that we can continue with our normal planned work. That would be estimated times for restoration, less than 6 hours. Our operations centers can handle everything. We don't need to call in additional support. And our command center can handle any of the switching or any of the other things that needs to happen. When we get to a level 1 storm, that's where the damage is isolated to just certain circuits within a district. It may be that the initial estimated time of restoration is greater than 6 hours, but probably not going to exceed 12 hours. At least that's what we're thinking when we put it at that level. Our operations centers are handling all the logistics, and we're not pulling in like a whole region. When we get to a level 2 storm, that's where the damage is more widespread. So that would be something that might be affecting an entire zone. And so a lot of storms like we see are hitting maybe Terre Haute and Bloomington. That might be just part of one region, but we're not seeing anything in the North Territory. If the incident is expected to take between 12 and 24 hours, that maintains that level 2 storm. And we may call in additional resources, but for the most part, it's going to be handled by that zone. Level 3 storms are our biggest challenge. And sometimes we're declaring a level 3 storm, especially in the case of a hurricane, before it's even happened, because we already know what's going to happen. It's going to hit our whole area. And we expect the restoration to take beyond 24 hours. And that is managed by a much bigger group within the incident command structure. It's more of a regional. So it might be our whole Midwest that would be handling a big storm or a tornado, that type of thing that would happen here. The June storms were a level 3 storm here in the Bloomington and Terre Haute areas. All right, so I want to make sure that everybody has a good understanding of how we get our power from our generation to the customer. And I think one of the reasons I want to make sure is because I know that I didn't have a full understanding of this when I started with Duke Energy, but it's important to understand how this happens so that you can also understand the restoration process. So if you look at number 1, that's our generation, like the power plants. And if you look at the number 2, it's showing where the transmission tower is going to the substation. And those transmission lines are what supplies power to a large number of people. So going from generation to, let's say, a community like Bloomington. where a large number of people over a large geographic area exist. And in that substation, that's where we lower the voltage to make it usable for our customers. And then, so you'll see number 4 then going from the substation to these other lines. Those are our main distribution lines. And that's where we're delivering electricity to a large community or maybe at some commercial customers. And then when you're looking at number 5, that's a power pole. You can see where that it indicates going to number, I can't read, number 7. That's underground service to a hospital in that case. And number 6, you'll see those lines going to a pole from our main distribution. That's our local distribution line. So that's going from kind of, if you're thinking of like a highway over to like a side street. And those are the types of lines that feed actual neighborhoods. Also on number 7, it is number 7. No, it's hard for me to read. It looks like there's 2 7s. My apologies. So there is a transformer on that pole. And so the transformer also reduces the voltage to make sure that that has the ability to serve the customers at the voltage that they would need. And then it would take those lines going to individual homes. There can sometimes also be pad mounted transformers. So transformers on the ground, you might see the green boxes. That's what those are. So with that understanding, when you're thinking about restoring power, you know, the lights go off in your home. You're wondering, when are we going to get to you? Well, we have to make sure that this whole chain is working before we can restore the power to your home. So when there's a big storm like what we saw in June, our first focus is really on public safety. We want to make sure that there aren't down lines. We want to make sure that the area is safe for the traveling public and that there's no danger. After that, we look at our transmission lines, our substations, our main distribution lines. We have to make sure that the power can get to the places to serve those customers. After that, we also make sure that all the essential services are up and running. So if it's a hospital or a nursing home, law enforcement, fire stations, water treatment plants, those are all really important. And we know that those protect the public also. So those are all the things that have to happen before we begin to work on the distribution lines and the individual customers. And when we're looking at those distribution lines, we want to try to restore power to the largest number of customers that we can as a priority. So that's the order of restoration. I wanted to make sure to include a slide to share with you some of the things that you can do to help make sure that you're prepared in the event of a power outage. And we have a lot of resources available online for you. We have our outage map, which a lot of people are familiar with, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the outage map in a moment. I would encourage everybody to sign up for text or email outage alerts if you haven't already. It's a really good way to stay up to date on maybe if an outage is in your area or when we might expect it to be restored. We have a mobile app. We have a way to report outages online, and I will encourage everybody to do that. And I'll talk a little bit more about the importance of that on the next slide. We also have a storm center that gives information about preparedness and storms, and a business storm center as well. So if you're a business owner, you might want to check that out. Just different preparedness tips to make sure that you know what you can do to be ready in case of an outage. And then also, very important, safety around down power lines. I think sometimes people don't really understand those dangers, but we want to make sure that people know. And for example, if you're driving and you see a line down on the road, don't assume that it's not live. Don't go over it. So anyway, there's the website right there. Okay, so the customer outage map is one that is very utilized by our customers, and you may have used it yourself. But there are a couple things that I wanted to point out when it comes to storm restoration. So in the June storms, one of the pieces of feedback we got a lot from our customers is, hey, there's no estimated time of restoration. It's saying you guys don't know. Are you even doing anything? Well, in some cases, like in a storm like the June storms, we had so much damage. It was taking us a while even to just assess the damage, to understand what was wrong and what needed to be fixed in order to develop that estimated time of restoration. So sometimes if you see that we don't know, it's because we really don't know, but we are working on it, and I can promise you that. The other thing I would mention is that this map is only as good as the data that we get. So I would encourage everybody, if you have a power outage at your home or your business, you should call it in. Don't assume that your neighbors have done it, or even if you see your area is under an outage, just call it in, because the more data we have, the better it is for us to understand and identify what the problem is and get that fixed. Okay, well, I have to give credit to my friends at Smithville for this picture, but I really wanted to share it with you all because I think if you see that rolling into town, you know you better be prepared. Yeah, so that was our June storm, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that brought us. First of all, just in terms of historical rankings of Indiana storms, that was the third biggest storm that we had seen at that point. And it was very isolated. Really, it was mostly focused on Monroe County and also in Terre Haute. But in general, the Midwest, and for us, the Midwest includes Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, Indiana being the biggest. But 59% of those storms are at a level 1. 32% are at a level 2, and only 9% are at a level 3. But in the 10-year period between 2013 and 2023, we had 16 level 3 events. That's a lot. All 16 escalated to a level 3 from a lower event. So that might be, we know a storm's coming, it seems minimal damage at first, but then after it sweeps through, we realize, well, it's a lot worse than we thought. And this storm, as I mentioned, was centralized here in Monroe County and also in Terre Haute. We had 65,000 customers that experienced some type of an outage during that storm in Monroe County. I also mentioned because after that storm, we had a lot of data that came in about Hurricane Helene, which ranked 5th for the Midwest, and which includes Ohio and Kentucky. Ohio and Kentucky were hit a lot harder than we were in that storm. That June storm barreled in here with 70 mile an hour plus wind gusts. And the wind is one of those things that's really tough for us. People worry about snow. Snow is not really an issue for us. Ice is an issue for us. Wind causes a lot of damage because it knocks over trees. And in some cases, you can see in one of these photos, snaps poles sometimes. And out of the 119,000 power outages that occurred across that region, half of those, roughly half, were here in Monroe County. As you know, there were roads closed, there were trees toppled, we had a lot of vegetation down, and that down vegetation and those trees made it really, really difficult. In some cases, we just couldn't get through on roads and we had to wait for those to be cleared. I'm sure all of you were very aware of it, but there were people that were traveling during that time and didn't really understand the severity of it. And I know I talked to some business owners that were really focused on their businesses, hadn't been out in some parts of the community in the county and didn't really understand how extensive it was. So that storm hit at 3:30, and 3 days later, by midnight, we had 99.8% of our customers restored, which is pretty incredible. For those that were out, it seemed like it was a lot longer, but we were working as fast as we could with a lot of help. That restoration was 100% complete by the 29th at 8 p.m. 97% of our customers, and I had mentioned the 65,000 people out, had experienced some type of an outage. That's huge. 97% of all of our Monroe County customers. That just shows you like how widespread that impact of that storm was. We had more than 1,500 events, and regular storms are about 100 events. And when I'm talking events, I'm thinking something specific that's happened that's going to cause an outage. It could be a broken pole. It could be a down line. We had over 12,000 calls to the customers, our customer call center. So that's also big. 6 transmission lines down. Remember when we talked earlier about the order of restoration? We couldn't possibly begin restoring anything to customers till we dealt with those transmission lines. We couldn't even have power to some of our substations until we got those lines back up. So that was a pretty big deal to us. 150 broken poles. That's a lot. That's a lot of broken poles. And we had hundreds of spans of wire down. Some of the pictures that you're seeing on this presentation were taken by our operations teams out in the field. Our corporate communications folks asked if I would work with them to try to get some of those photos. So I drove around and got photos. Our operations folks were sending me tons of photos just to really be able to describe and understand the extent of the damage. And I have to thank a lot of people for help with the storm response. I really want to say, with the help of IU, we were able to stage our workers over at Memorial Stadium. We really appreciate that kind of assistance. And when we call on IU for help, there's never any hesitation. We work closely with the city of Bloomington. We work closely with our county officials, just in sharing communications. If there's a line down or a tree that's brought lines down or something blocking a road, we all work together in these times of emergency, just to make sure that we can get the roads cleared, that we can keep the public safe. We talk regularly throughout the storm. I try to provide updates to community leaders to make sure that people understand what's going on, and updates to local media. During that storm, we had about 1,100 linemen, damage assessors, and tree clearing professionals, and they were working round the clock in different shifts to restore power just as quickly and safely as possible. And once our foundation got wind of how substantial the damage was, they awarded a $20,000 grant to the South Central Community Action Program to provide support for those impacted by the storms. And they decided to use that money to help with medication for both people and pets that might have been lost because of power outage. So that was really special. So just really quickly about the hurricanes, because people are really curious. We had 5.5 million power outages across our service territory. So it was huge. And Helene hit all of our jurisdictions. I won't go into a lot of information on this right now. All right. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. Yeah, and the hurricanes impact us here in a lot of different ways. Not only if the storm should happen to bring a lot of rain or something like that, but we have to send our workers for mutual assistance. So sometimes local projects and things get put on hold while we work on those projects. And then lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the examples of grid improvements here in Monroe County, because believe it or not, we've been investing continuously in the grid. And so people are always curious, well, how reliable is the grid? And of course, there's things like Mother Nature that are always going to potentially impact us. But it is important to know that we are in the midst of a 6-year plan to overhaul and add new things to the grid that will help make it more resilient. One of the things is the self-healing technology. And if you think about GPS in your car on your map, and there's an accident, you can be rerouted through your GPS. Well, that's really kind of what we're trying to do with the grid as well. So that allows us to isolate those outages and keep those percentages of customers who are without power at a minimum. And some of the examples of things that we're doing, we're investing in our substations. You might have seen on Rogers Street a lot of the work that's been going on there, and it's expanded enormously. So if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to drive by. It's looking much better these days. But also you might remember the reliability project that we had last summer and the summer before. We were rebuilding some of our substations, but we were also building a brand new transmission line to connect 3 different substations. And that just keeps us with more reliable power source. If something happens in one area, we can reroute that power to help serve customers in another area. We're also upgrading our wooden poles to steel poles. And that's really important because the steel poles withstand the weather more. That's not to say that they can't have damage, but they're much more likely to withstand a storm and not snap like you saw some of the wooden poles. And I would say that as a result of all these things, we have had impacts, positive impacts to the amount that people have been without power. And you may not know it, of course, because your power's on and you don't think about it, but just let me reassure you that there have been a lot of improvements and we will continue to make improvements. Some of these projects are ongoing for the next few years. And with that, I don't know if there's time for questions, but
Yeah,
I'm
I think
happy
we have
to-
time for a couple of questions.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much. Like many people here, I'm sure I've been watching the LA fire situation, which is tragic. But one of the things that comes up over and over again, and it may have application here, as you're investing millions, and of course the folks out there are going to have to as well, is there some thought being given to putting these lines underground? I mean, and I'm not challenging you, but did someone say, hey, before we put up 500 new steel poles, maybe we should take some of that money and start putting
Sure.
this stuff underground? Because that seems to be my perception. It's not my world. That's where a lot of the damage and crisis evolved from, these fallen lines and fallen poles. So is there some current thinking about that at Duke?
Well, I would tell you that it's a question we get a lot. And so for those of you, I'm sure you guys all heard the question, but it's about burying our lines and are we thinking about that? And I would say that there are situations where we feel like that makes sense. And we're always looking at our reliability. But I think, I gave you the statistic about the number of thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles of lines. It costs a lot of money to bury lines. And it's not always easy to do. When you think about Monroe County and the amount of rock we have here, for example, it takes us much longer in those situations where we're burying lines. It is something we do. Some neighborhoods have buried lines, and that's another question that people ask is, well, how come some neighborhoods have buried lines and others don't? Well, a lot of the newer neighborhoods will have buried lines because it's a requirement of the development, but those are also costs that are borne by the developer. We have to be really careful of our costs. That's one of the measures that we need to think about when we're making any kind of changes. Things like transmission lines require huge amounts of space to bury. And so it's not always possible. It's difficult to get the easements and the rights of way to do some of that work. And the other thing, what we have found is that it's not always, the buried lines are not always more reliable. If you think about some of the recent projects that have been going on in the city where you've heard about lines being cut or sewer getting dug into, we have issues with that. We're as vulnerable as anybody else. People don't realize it. They dig through our lines. And if there is an outage and it's a buried line, sometimes it takes a lot longer for us to identify and fix the problem. So I would say we do have a fair amount of buried. It is something that we would consider for example, in a neighborhood, when we're doing our reliability studies, if we see a neighborhood that continuously has problems with power outages, we will look to see, does it make sense for us to bury here? Are the costs of addressing those outages bigger for us than the cost of burying? So we weigh all of that and evaluate it. But yes, it is something I think a lot of power companies are thinking about. We just have to weigh the reliability, and we also have to think about the costs because those end up being borne by the customer.
One more question. Anybody online? No.
No.
Yes, I have a question. Can you hear me? This is my experience with a power company in another state. And thinking of the cold conditions, they had rules during the winter that they could not and would not disconnect anybody's electricity for non-payment of bills. Is that Duke's policy also, or what do you know about that?
Yes, there is a moratorium during the winter months where we do not disconnect customers. You're correct about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And in honor of your program, Liz, we will donate $100 to the warehouse as our charity for the quarter. So fantastic job. And for acknowledgements, Natalie, thank you as our executive assistant. As always, we couldn't do this without you. Jim Shea, great job greeting. Dakir, great job introducing our guest. And Joy, as always, great job on Zoom. Winston, great job on the reflection. And Kyla, as always, as a reporter, it's the toughest job. I always say it every time. So thank you for your dedication there. And Michael for running the camera and mic operator. And hats off to our new audio, Isaac Smith, first time in. So our next meeting will be on the 21st in the Frangipani Room, and our speaker will be John Fernandez discussing the Mill Trades District. I'm sure he's got a lot to share given all the recent articles that we've seen. And with that, if you could, Isaac, put up the four-way test, and everybody, of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, and fourth, it'll be beneficial to all. And fifth, is it fun? All right, we'll get that next time.